Good afternoon, everyone. Mark, our president, sent out an email. The shul is going to reopen, God willing, tomorrow evening. But these little classes, the 15 minutes of Torah, will continue, and they'll be recorded, and you'll be able to listen to them when you wish. And I'm going to do them in person in the synagogue by Mincha Maariv. We're also going to be open actually for Shabbat, and we're going to be open for Purim. But Baruch Hashem, we're going to get back to normal, whatever normal is. It's a year already that the new normal has been here. In any event, one of the perplexing issues that exists in this week's Parsha of Mishpatim is the fact that the Torah records that the princes of Israel somehow gazed, stared, saw heaven and God. How do we interpret that? You can't see God because there's nothing there to see. And the Rebbeinu Shalom himself said, "Kilo Yerani Odom B'choy." Human beings can never see the ineffable. They can never see godliness, so to speak. We can experience it. Our soul, our neshama can have a relationship to it, but there's nothing to see. So what does the pasuk mean? Vayechazu Yasu Elohim. They saw God. And they not only saw him, they gazed and stared, and they were satiated with it, like standing on the brink of the Grand Canyon. You see everything. What makes it further complicated, all the Meforshim discuss this, because it's a basic idea. When Moshe Rabbeinu is first introduced to us by the burning bush, so there he is told, first of all, Shal na'lecho me'al raglecho, to remove your shoes, because you're standing on the mountain of Horeb, Mount Sinai, and it is a holy place, and therefore, as a sign of respect, you should remove your shoes. You shouldn't tread upon the holy mountain. But then it says that Moshe refused to look. Ki yorei me'habit. He was afraid to look at God, so to speak, because this revelation was of such a nature to him that he was afraid to look. So what does it mean he was afraid to look? What is he going to look at? And in next week's Parsha, we have even greater difficulty, because there Moshe says, Hareini noes kvodecha, let me see your glory. And it says there that the Rebbeinu Shalom said to him, you'll see me from the back, but not from the front. Hashem al ponov, Rebbeinu Shalom passed him, so to speak. What are we doing to make of all of this? So there are distinct streams in the commentators to the Chumash as to how to try and grasp the import of these psukim. So one stream is based on the Talmudic statement, Dibra Torah Koloshim B'nai Odom. And sometimes the Torah speaks in human terms. In other words, the Torah, there's no other way to express it. There's no other way for human beings to understand it. The Torah doesn't want to go into a philosophic discussion that no one will really understand, or that the masses will certainly not understand. So Dibra Torah Koloshim B'nai Odom. The Torah spoke to us the way human beings talk. The human beings talk is when you want to say, for instance, I understand you, or I understand something, you say, oh yeah, I see it. And there we don't mean see with the eyes, but we mean that we get it, we understand, we know what's being discussed. We're not in the dark about it. So applying that idea to these psukim is that Moshe Rabbeinu originally didn't want to have anything to do with it. We see that Moshe refuses the job. Shlach no bi'ad tishlach, send somebody else. So God, so to speak, offered him that he would understand this whole thing with Mitzrayim. Why they went down to Egypt, why they're persecuted in Egypt, why now they're going to go out of Egypt, why it's going to take 10 plagues to get them out. That was, so to speak, the offer that's made to Moshe. Moshe hid his face. Moshe doesn't want to know. He doesn't want to know. He doesn't want to become involved. And he knows that by realizing the entire story, he's going to become involved. So he tries to skirt it. He tries to avoid it. The Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't let him. Forces him into it. So later on, Moshe wants to understand. After having gone through Yetzias Mitzrayim, and after having gone through all of these events in Ma'amad Har Sinai, so now Moshe wants to know the ultimate knowledge. I want to know how God runs the world. How finally it all does make sense. There the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, Kilo Yirani Odom V'choy. No, Moshe, that's not given to you. So the princes of Israel that said that they saw and they stared, etc., that means they tried to understand it all. After Ma'amad Har Sinai, now we can understand it all. But the end was that they didn't understand. They couldn't understand. So that's one stream of interpretation. A second stream, which is a very sophisticated and delicate one, is that the Jewish people, as we will see in the Parsha of Kisisa, they're not cured of Avodah Zarah. And what was Avodah Zarah? Paganism. It's somehow representing and identifying God with a physical presence or a physical form. And that physical presence or physical form, be it a statue, whatever it be, a river, a mountain, is to be worshipped. Because that's where God is. That's where you see God. Moshe never succumbed to that. But here, the elders of Israel, the princes, they're coming from hundreds of years of Egyptian society. You know, you can take the Jews out of the Golas, but it's harder to take the Golas out of the Jews. Chazal say, Pesel Micha Ovar Imohem Bayon. There was an idol called Micha, Pesel Micha, belonged to Micha. And they carried that idol out with them. And we find later in Tanakh that Pesel Micha was present with them. They couldn't give it up. You know, children, when they're infants, oftentimes have a relationship with their blanket. It gives them security. And as they become older, so they drag the blanket along with them as a sense of security, even though they realize intellectually that the blanket is not the source of their security. But nevertheless, it makes them feel good. So the Jewish people had this Avodah Zorah with them all the time. And because they had this Avodah Zorah with them all the time, it was possible for them to think, after they heard Matan Torah from the Rabbanu Shalom, that there is a form there to be worshipped. There's a substance. And therefore they stared. They gazed. They're looking for the physical form because that's how they thought, so to speak, theologically, spiritually. They couldn't think any other way. And that will explain to us, or at least open up some avenue of understanding of the golden calf. Eile Elohecha Yisrael. Here's your God, Israel. But they realized that the calf is made out of gold. They realized, but they had to have a form to worship. You cannot worship nothing. That's too sophisticated an idea after 300-400 years of Egyptian society. To worship nothing? Something that can't be dealt with physically at all? So we have to have, so to speak, our security blanket. That becomes the Egel Azov. That becomes the golden calf. And this idea, therefore, is why the Torah here in the Parsha of Mishpatim inserted this idea. It, so to speak, is the precursor to what's going to happen in Kisisa. A few weeks from now, where the golden calf will occur. So the Torah wanted to give us a preface that we should be able to deal with it. So that was another stream of interpretation into this very difficult a concept which the Torah seems to advance here. So I've discussed with you too, there are many more, but our time is limited. But it's something that we should consider and realize the necessary sophistication to enable us to worship nothing. I want to thank you again all for watching. And in Mirza Hashem, you should all be well. And we'll continue learning together, God willing. Kol Tuv Selah. Thank you.